Hello, my name is Debbie, owlandgatorstitcher. Welcome to Flosstube number 36. Today is Monday, June 27th, 2022. This is a video mainly about cross-stitch, sometimes a little bit about what I'm reading and watching, and just a chance to sit down and chat with you. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope that you will like what you see and click on that subscribe button and drop me a comment below. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching me every couple of weeks when I have some time to film these videos. I really enjoy all the interaction with everyone and just being able to share my love of cross stitch. So I have my exciting news for me is that my husband and I are going off to Las Vegas next week for the week of 4th of July. During March 2020, we had a flight that we were supposed to take, and when it became clear that where we were going, they were going to close the airport, we quickly changed our flights so that we could get back before they closed the airport, because we were heading at that point what was home for us. And if we didn't get that flight, we had no idea when we were going to be able to get back on a plane to go there. And we wanted to go home, basically because my kitties were there, and didn't want to, have kitties in it roaming around the house and having, it's not good for them for what we thought might have been months on months of them not having anyone except coming in feeding them once a day. We wanted them to be able to get a little bit more love than that. So anyhow, we made a decision to quickly change our tickets. We were unable to change the ticket, so we just bought a new one. And American Airlines did give us a credit for the flight which they canceled. It wasn't just that we changed our flight, it was that they actually canceled the flight. But it took them a long time to credit it, to the point where we thought this isn't going to happen. And we were poking around in our accounts, and all of a sudden we noticed that they did give us the credit, and this is now more than 2 years later, but we have to use it by September. So my husband and I are like, let's go to Vegas, just do something fun. We haven't had a vacation for the two of us in over 2 years. We both have traveled a little bit and gone to things, but not together. So we said, let's do this. And so we purchased tickets, and we're planning to go some shows and have a good time. I obviously am going to Stitcher's Paradise. I'm really looking forward to, I've heard great things about that local needle workshop. So I'm really looking forward to having a chance to visit that. And if you're going to be in Vegas the week of July 4th, just drop me a line below, and it'll be great if, maybe we can meet up at Stitcher's Paradise so we can have a chance to meet. So I'm really looking forward to that trip next week. And I obviously have been watching a lot of Flosstube recently, as I tend to do while I'm stitching. And I was watching Julie from Kansas City Girl in a Colorado World, and she is in the process of packing up her home. And she's their landlord asked them to leave because he wants to have someone else, friends of his, live in that house. And so she's obviously in the process of packing, and you start cleaning out things, and she went like a mad woman and did a bunch of fully finishes. And she's an amazing stitcher, and she always has lots of finishes anyhow, but she just did even more. And I'm always impressed by people who have such creative minds. And I thought, if she can, in the process of packing up everything and doing everything that she's doing, take the time to whip out all of these finishes, I can do one. And so I do have my box of items that I've finished stitching, but I have to figure out what I'm going to do with them next. And it's not my strong suit. I love the stitch. And if I'm getting a piece professionally framed, I will take it to the framer and get that done. But if it's something that I have to do, it's not something that I'm great at doing. And so as a result, it just sort of sits there. But I felt inspired, and I thought, while the flame is hot, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I did one. And this is one, I knew what I was going to do. I knew I had all the pieces, and I just had to take the time to put it together. So this is my fully finished object. This is the Sense and Sensibility Stitch Along from last year from the Stitching Book Club Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts. And this was when I finished it probably over a year ago now. And I bought the kit, and so she had finishing materials, and it was a lovely finish, but it required some sewing. And while she does have a tutorial on YouTube on how to finish it, I am not great at sewing, and I thought that's probably a little bit more than I am willing to try. And when I say I'm not great at sewing, if it's more than just sewing on a button, or possibly fixing a hem, I really don't know how to do it. I don't own a sewing machine. I would love to have a house full of little pillows with cross stitch, and that's not going to happen unless I pay someone to do it. So anyhow, that's an aside. So I had this Nerge hoop. I originally saw this, I purchased a similar one at Michael's, but it was a little bit wider than this one. And I liked the way it looked, except the fabric wasn't wide enough for it. And so I went on Amazon and purchased a pack of Nerge hoops to see if one would fit. And this one did. And this one actually came with the little hanger on it. And it's you can sort of see, it's this nice looking hanger there. Quite nice. And the size fit, and I was able to get the fabric in. If you are not familiar with these kinds of hoops, it's sort of a rubber, and it is sort of a tension hoop. You put the fabric in and you just sort of pull it tight. But the reality is this does not, they're very fiddly, and it's very hard to get it in, get the hoop on, and then having kept your fabric in the right place. So it took me a while to do that. I'm sure if my husband saw me doing it, it would provide him much amusement, because I'm sure I had a lot of very interesting facial expressions as I was doing this. Words are hard this morning. It's Monday morning. But once I got it into where I wanted it, I also had the challenge that for some reason, the hanger was not at the top. It was sort of over here. And I just think that this rubberized thing got a little warped at some point. And so I spent a lot of time sort of loosening it up and trying to get the thing on the top so that it will hang, my thing won't hang like this on the wall. So I finally did that and spent quite a bit of time with that. And all I did was, once I got it in, did a very light lacing on the back just to pull the pieces together, put some peach felt, glued it on the back. I have no qualms to tell you. I don't even know how to cut well in a straight line, let alone, curved line. But since that will go against the wall, I don't really care. Just gives a little bit of backing to it, protection against from putting the actual stitch piece directly against the wall. And so that's where I am. So that I'm really happy with this piece. I'm happy with the FFO, and you can't see where it is, but I'm going to put it on the wall here. I have another piece, very different from this, but it's about the same size, and I finished it with the exact same hoop. So they're just going to go side by side because I have a good place for it. So that was my FFO, and glad I was able to have that inspiration from Julie. So that was a lot of fun. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you my stitching. So the first piece I'm going to show you, and this was a new start for me in late 2021 as I was preparing for no new starts for 2022. So I had a lot of pieces that I put in 200 stitches. And that is sideways. And so this is One Nation by ByGone Stitches. I think many of you are familiar with this, with the 50 stars and then all of the 50 U.S. states. And they're in the order that they were, that they became part of the United States. So that's that picture. I'm not going to show a before picture because I had so few stitches in it. And this is the first time that I'm showing it. So here is where I am now. So I put in over 1,000 stitches on this, and this was such a mesmerizing stitch. I know there are a lot of people who take out this project and they do, trying to make it so you can see it better. They do 1 star, 1 state a week. And obviously you finish it in 52 or 50 weeks, probably 52, given there's probably some weeks that you don't get a chance to work on it. But I've made a decision that's, I don't like having sort of obligations to have to stitch a little amount on a project. When I pick something up, I just want to be able to roll with it. And this one in particular, it was mesmerizing to work on. It was so much fun. And I am using the DMC conversion and not the fancy floss. And I just would pick it up, cut off the size that I needed. And once I got the rhythm of the pattern, I never had to look at the actual chart. I could just start stitching and up and down. And then same with these sort of, they're not the stars, but like the flowers here. You just got into the rhythm of doing it. And once you got used to doing it, never had to look at it. And so it was just so much fun to work on. And my goal this month was to put 1,000 stitches in it. And I did, I think, 400 the first day. And then I said, okay, the last 600 I'll split over, the next two more days so I can get my 1,000 stitches. And the next day I did have a good long stitching session, and I hit, I think, about 300. And I said, well, just push to 400. And then I'm like, I can stitch on this so quickly. I can get my 600 without a problem. And so I just kept going, and it was so much fun. I did put it down because I had other things I wanted to work on. But it was really nice to have a chance just to get some love into this. And I can see why so many people are working on it. It's not just a fabulous design to look at, but it's a lot of fun to stitch. I am using the called for fabric, which is Picture This Plus Ale. I originally had selected or wanted to use a different fabric. My go-to is 32 count, but the problem with this pattern on 32 count is that it doesn't quite fit on a fat quarter. And that meant I would have either had to go buy a custom cut, or I would have to bump up to a fat half. And not that I'm not willing to do that. I have plenty of projects that I do that on, but it was just so close to not fitting on a fat quarter. So I sort of said, let me think about it for a while. And while I was doing that, and I was planning for no new starts and knew I was going to have a bunch of starts at the end of 2021, I started looking through what I had already kitted up and made a decision that I had a few projects that I knew I wasn't going to want to start in the near future. And so I was, the word is unkitting, dekitting. I was pulling them apart, saying this isn't something that I want to work on in the near, like certainly not in 2022, maybe not 2023. Pulled those projects out and said, obviously I can always keep the pattern and do it later. But happened to be in one of those. And it was really a decision made not to do that project. And then as I was looking at the fabric, I'm like, I have a 36 count Picture This Plus Ale in a fat quarter. And I said, well, that, and knowing there's a lot of white in this, obviously you need a fabric that's a little bit darker. I thought, well, I'm going to use the called for fabric. And 36 count is still a little bit tight with this, but nonetheless, it gives me maybe 1.5 inch, 2 inch margins. Usually I leave 3 inch margins, but it's enough that this is a piece that will get framed professionally. There will be plenty for them to work with. A good framer. I tend not to map my projects unless there's a really good reason why. And so so I just said I'm going to do it. And I post, I play a lot of games on Facebook, and this one, when I was posting it, so many people just said, that fabric is amazing. What is it? Like people, it's not one of the groups where you're like, look how pretty this is. It's like, here, I've done 200 stitches. But a number of people commented on the color of the fabric. And so that's why I'm sort of spending a lot of time talking about it right now. It is really a nice fabric. It's dark. It's got, but it's not, it's sort of a yellowish brown, and it's warm, and it's got these sort of tones here. It really is a lovely fabric. I do love Picture This Plus. I know some people say the holes are too small, whatever. I am doing this. I am doing it 2/2, and I don't find that it's crowded. Now, granted, this is not a dense project, especially when you get to the state names. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing 2 strands, is that I want, especially the state names, to really pop out. And so I think doing it with 2 strands will make it show up better. But anyhow, that is One Nation. Last video, I commented that I was having a chance, I pulled out, in the beginning of the month, I pulled out quite a few smaller projects that I hadn't touched yet this year. And and it was fun to pull out these things that I really like, but just because I do love working on my large projects so much that sometimes the smaller ones get a little bit left out. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and maybe pull out another small project. And so I pulled out this one. This is called Sister Bears, or Caroline and Emma. I never really know which one it is, what the real name is, but this is from an old issue of Cross Stitch and Country Crafts. And they, over whatever year that was from, this is from the mid-90s, they had a series of bears, sibling bears, I don't know, whatever. And all the bears have names. So this one is Caroline and Emma, although it looks more like a mother bear, baby bear, but whatever. And so anyhow, I just pulled this out and put a few hundred stitches in it just to give love to some of my smaller projects. So here is where it was before. And here is where I am now. So again, only a couple hundred stitches, but in the little bear here, I basically still need to put a little bit more in there, but did a lot to fill in this bear. He had a lot of holes in them. I don't know which one is Caroline, which one is Emma, but there were a lot of holes in that bear. And so filled in a lot with that. And then it's sort of hard, the yellow fabric, but I did quite a bit here, put some in the pads of this bear's feet, pulled out the green, and I had done some green already, but put more green in to fill out the little bow here. This is a toy block, so use some of the green there. And just generally working it. Again, with all my small projects, I'm like, I don't have that much left. And then I start stitching, and 300 stitches later, I'm like, I can see that I've made progress, but still feel like I'm still not really closer to the finish line. And so anyhow, but this one, I don't think, there's fewer than 1,000 full crosses left in it. That I'm sure of. There's a lot of backstitch. The only backstitch I've done today is in the hat. So it still needs a lot more love to get done. Don't know when I'm planning to work on it again. But nonetheless, I enjoyed pulling this out and having a chance to work on it again and giving love to more of my small projects. And I know some people commented that they enjoyed seeing some of the small projects, just to sort of see different things, because I love my full coverages, but a lot of times they don't look like much of anything. So there's just lots of dots until all of a sudden the whole thing gets pulled together. Next piece I worked on, I think many of you are familiar with this. This is A Year at Hawkrun Hollow, and I am going down. So I am currently in the October block, working on that witch and her cauldron. And again, only put a few hundred stitches in this, but so it was all the black. And so basically most of what I did was all the black on this cauldron here. And then just because it was driving me crazy and I still need to finish it, I had the D there, and so I put in Ron, and then I ran out of thread. So and it was a good stopping point for me, so I have to come back. There's a part of me that I love the way this witch looks right now. She seems sort of, I'm trying to think of a polite way to say it, but she looks really tough and strong. And to me, it looks like she's got on a black mini skirt, and she's got her heels here, and shoes and all that, and she just looks like, yeah. Now the reality is, the cauldron, she probably does come down this way, and the cauldron is just blocking her, and her dress comes down a little bit more, so she won't look like that for long, but I do enjoy sort of looking at her right now as she is, and just sort of thinking, yeah, she's a strong, tough witch. She's a good woman. But nonetheless, a lot of fun working on this one as well. So that is A Year at Hawkrun Hollow. Next piece, another small that I pulled out just to work on some more smalls. And that is this one. This is Princess Lili from a French company. I will never be able to say the name of that, so I'm not even going to try. So little cute princess in her carriage. And definitely, I definitely need to have fabric behind this one because this is a very sheer fabric. To have some heat behind it. So really not that much to see here. Sorry for all the crinkling. And this is one of those, and I don't know if it's the pattern or the fabric, but I just find that it's very fiddly and I'm just losing track of where I am. So it just takes me a long time to even put in a couple hundred stitches. So what I worked on this time was I had done some of this yellow, I think that's 744, and finished it off. And then I went back and I had done some of this cream colored as well and just did some more of that. So this is obviously the carriage, and that's where I am. And I, of course, forgot to say, here's where it was before with both this one and Yard Hawthorne Hollow, but I'll have inserted those photos somewhere. And then the next piece I'm going to show you, this is Aria by Firelight by Tilton Crafts. So a full coverage piece. And this, I had purchased the pattern probably a couple years ago, and then I jumped on a stitch along that Hannah from Hannah Dowling, and I think it's Corinne from Grace and Stitchers. They are both working on pieces that have, Tilton Crafts has a number of these charts that have a piano and set in sort of a nice ornate setting, for lack of a better word. So that's what I chose to do. Because I had it, I'm like, this is a good excuse to pull it out and start working on it now. And it's different than a lot of the full coverages I'm working on. So here is where it was before, and here is where it is now. So it really doesn't look like much. I am doing this across country within the frame here, as you can tell. So I basically just pull out, 938 was definitely a color I was working on. There's a little 3799. A lot of the dark colors because I'm starting to pull from this side. So basically what this is here, you can start to see it here. This is, I believe it's a vase that's in shadow. So it's just something dark. But then as I'm pulling those colors, this whole thing here is actually the fireplace. So this line that's coming across is the mantle. And then down here is, and I'm not sure what the exact word is for it. You would think that English is not my first language, but it is. But this is where, like, this gap here is where the actual flames of the fire is. And this is the hearth or whatever, but this is obviously the space behind it that is dark. So that's sort of to give an image. And then this here, this is a mirror. So again, really doesn't look like much. I know what it is because I look at the picture and try and figure out where I am in it. But it's a lot of fun and enjoy working on this. And Jessie Marie, who has a lovely Flosstube and also is the WhipGo creator, guru, everything else. She has pulled the numbers today, and this was one of the projects that was called. So we'll definitely be coming out in July and having a chance to work on it again. Next piece I'm going to show you, which I've already lost. Excuse me for one moment. Yes, here we go. Get the color balance back. This is Old World Map by Artecy, the large version, and this is my oldest project. It was started Christmas Day 2019, and it was sort of the jumping off point from when I went from being basically a monogamous stitcher to starting and stitching everything and having no finishes, which I'm okay with. But here's where I am. Here's where I was before. And here is where I am now. So I always feel like I have to come over and show on this side. This one, for a variety of reasons, normally I start in the upper left, and this one I started in the upper right. So for me to do my bottom white and show you what I worked on. feel more comfortable doing it from this side. But in any case, basically I am, again, also like Aria by Firelight, I'm starting on one side and pulling the colors, and as they pop up, I am using them. Once I'm doing that after I got sort of a lot of the white, I think it's 3865, into the globe. And so that was a great jumping off point. So basically, I am, a lot of the colors that were popping up are sort of the golds that encircle the North Pole area. And then they are, I think this is Asia. I'd have to go back and look at the map, whatever country that is, or whatever continent that is. A lot of the colors that come in here, and then periodically there are the lines. So this is now really starting to get filled in, and occasionally come over here. So this is the Eastern Hemisphere, and this is the Western Hemisphere. So as the colors come here, they're then starting to come over here to this view of the globe, and then some of these dark colors in between here. So again, I probably put in 400 or 500 stitches since I showed this the last time, so not a huge number for such a huge piece, but nonetheless, it's good to, pull progress. And this one always is in the back of my mind because it is my oldest project, and I have no visions of getting it done in the next couple of years. There's always something satisfying about saying this is my oldest piece and I've made progress on it. So that's where I am on this. And then the next piece, I show this almost every video. This is Artecy's High Intensity, the cropped version. And I do have a goal of getting this finished. So here's where it was before. And I obviously have moved the Q-snap down. And so I just put in a lot of the black background. And this is the bottom of the piece. So very happy. There's always some psychological thing that even if you measure it 100 times, knowing that it actually does fit on the fabric and that you measure correctly. So the background, not very exciting to show this time, but nonetheless, background is important. And again, this is about 1,000 stitches that I put in, and it's just, again, it's all 310 background. So while not, except for this part here, not a lot of block stitching per se, but also not really difficult stitching either. And then the last piece I have to show you, I'm very excited. This is Heaven and Earth Designs, Cats in the Toy Box. And this is a piece I work on many evenings. And I have pulled it out of the Q-snap, and that's why I'm so excited to show you. Because, let's see if I can get this all in here. So, there we go. So that's what it looks like now. I'm loving this piece. It is so much fun to work on. And then the area that I worked on this time was, so I can't remember exactly where I was last time. And of course, I will have inserted the picture if I didn't say it. But I know that I was focusing on trying to move the Q-snap this way. So I certainly was working on getting the colors in the doll here in her dress. And then a lot of work on this kitty. Did a lot in this kitty's ear here. So a lot of pink and really pretty colors. And not quite done with the eye here, but last time it was definitely a one-eyed kitty. And now that eye has a lot more definition. Finished off these beads down here. And then because the color's here, also popped up in the clown a little bit over there. Also started getting more definition in the teddy bear down here. So this piece, such a joy to work on. And it's one of those things that in the evenings, a lot of times I'll have good stitching session during the afternoon, and I sort of stop when I'm tired, and I'll be like, oh, I'm tired, and maybe I'll go read for a while, whatever. But then I'm still tired, and I have to get up and make dinner and do all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's work. I'm tired. And then after dinner, we cleaned up the kitchen, whatever, I made my cup of tea. I sit down and I'm like, I'm tired, but I'm watching TV. Might as well do something productive. And I pick up that piece and it revitalizes me and it wakes me up. And that's to me what stitching should do. If it's a hobby and if it's something that's making you tired, why continue to do it? Like, why make it such a chore? I do participate in a lot of games, and I have to say I'm starting to get a little burnt out on some of them. So I probably will be dropping out of some of them at some point, because I sometimes feel that it pushes me. While it's good to have an excuse to stitch, sometimes it's pushing me beyond what I want to be doing at any given time. And I'm doing that so I can meet the goal challenge. But if it's burning me out for my stitching, then it's sort of counterproductive. But this piece does the opposite. It doesn't matter what I'm doing it for. I just get so excited. And I even had on the weekend, I had to stay up late on Saturday night. And and we had the TV on, and I think I started a little bit before dinner, but then kept going. And I put in 600 stitches in that, basically in one session, which usually that gets a couple hundred stitches every evening. So that was just a lovely long session. And, when I finished it, I was so happy that I had made that great progress. So that is all the stitching I have to show you. I do have a little bit of talk about my plans and haul, and then something I'm reading or read, and something I watched. But if you're only here to see what I was working on, thank you so much. And if you are interested in seeing my teeny bit of haul, I do have that to show you. So I placed an order with Tiny Hummingbird Stitchery. It's Sammy J here on Flosstube, and she started a small online shop. And right now you access it through Facebook. She does have a website, but she's building it. So you don't do your purchases there. You do it through Facebook, and then she sends you an invoice. And so I see things, and obviously one chart shouldn't travel alone, but I'm trying really hard not to impulse buy. So it's not, if I see a chart and there are other things, but they're not exactly what I want, like I'll hold off and hope that she still has it when I come back, but whatever. So that worked out this time. So she had, this one is, I'm collecting the whole series. This is the Cottage Garden Samplings. It's called Forever and Ever, but I think everyone just knows it as Love. And a ton of people have stitched this, and it's gorgeous. So I was happy to be able to get the pattern. And that's, and I've already started even, all of this series calls for, I think, almost, or if not everything exclusively in weeks dye works, then almost exclusively. And I don't love stitching with weeks. I find, and a lot of people have said this, that it knots up more so than any other floss that I use. So I will use it. I don't mind using it every now and then, because DMC knots up sometimes. But despite what everyone says, I find sulky knots up sometimes too on me. But I am trying to do some conversion on these. So at least some of it will not be weeks. So a little bit is going through my stash of what I have, which is some of the colors I have already in here. And some of it is just sort of saying going online. Like she does give a DMC conversion for all of her charts. And I could just do it in the DMC, but I just have to be difficult with myself. And so I'm saying, okay, if this color does Classic Color Works or GAST make something similar to that? And if they do, great. If not, I will use the weeks or the DMC. Haven't started stitching any of these yet. So who knows what I'll actually do when I get there. But that's why in all of these, I am putting like a little conversion for myself in there. So I've already started pre-kitting this in anticipation that at some point I will start it. These are all about 159. They're not, I don't know if they're perfect squares, but somewhere between 150 stitches to 160. For no new starts, that actually, I believe, makes it a large. And I don't have any large spots. So who knows when I'll actually get them started. And same with this series. So this is also Cottage Garden Samplings. This is A Year in the Woods. I think everyone is familiar with this series. So I had seen this one. And then when she had this one, I'm like, okay, now I can get two. So I went ahead and did that. And so I bought the Bald Eagle. And I have sort of made a decision that I am going to stitch these in sets of 3. While part of me likes the idea of having them individually, because they're not like some charts, like By the Bay Needle Arts, you can buy individual charts and they do stand alone, but then you can put them together and it makes a lot of sense. These don't necessarily. It's not like you have an eagle up in a tree and then down here you have a ferret on the ground and a bear maybe climbing up. It doesn't really work that way. It's just three animals side by side. But I also sort of started thinking about it and thought, if I really did all 12, that's a lot of framing, because obviously then in addition to the top and sides, you have the frame down the sides, and it does, I think if I measured correctly, I can, on my 32 count that I love, I can fit this into three of these into a fat quarter if I do them side by side. But if I do them individually, I don't think they will fit on a fat quarter, because obviously you need to leave more space in between. So I think they will look great, all three together. In a perfect world, that's not what I would do, but we don't live in a perfect world, and I do occasionally think about, again, I have visions that I'm going to complete everything that I want to complete. But nonetheless, if I were to complete everything I thought I was going to be able to complete, I do then start to think about, where am I going to hang it in my open plan house? Obviously, the bedrooms in this house have walls, but the rest of the house only has the walls, the outside walls. In our living room, dining room, kitchen, there are only the external walls. There's no walls in between. So we don't have a huge amount of wall space in this house. And so I start thinking about that. And then we also have a lot of bookshelves, as you can see. And over here, a lot of the bookshelves are also quite tall, so you can't really put things above there, because the bookshelves are over 6 feet tall. And while I purge a lot of my books, my husband does not. And happy for him to keep his books, but that does limit a lot of our space. So anyhow, that is all the stitching I have. And now let me tell you about a book that I read and a TV show that I watched. The book I want to talk about is a fun book. It's a romance called Evie Drake Starts Over. Linda Holmes, I believe, is the author. And it's a book about a woman, she's in her 20s, early 30s, around that age, who is unexpectedly widowed. And she lives in a small town in Maine. And she has so she and her husband had a house. And she has she calls it an apartment. I think it's just a room that has an external, or does, whatever. It's a room that's off their kitchen that someone can live in. Doesn't really sound like an in-law suite. Doesn't even sound like it has its own kitchen. It probably had an own bathroom. But anyhow, she's got a space there that she calls her apartment. And she decides an offer comes along where she can rent it out to someone. And the person that she rents it out to is a Major League Baseball pitcher who developed a case of the yips and basically just suddenly was unable to pitch at all. And so she's going through the struggle of being widowed, and you find out very early on that it wasn't a happy marriage, that she was actually planning to leave him. And the day that she was going to leave him is when she got the call that her husband died. And this guy also, who moves in with her, he's just going through, everything that the press is saying about how, what's wrong with him and all of this. And it's, and so they develop a friendship, and just sort of develops about, as each of them sort of work through the issues that they have to work through about the dramatic changes in their lives. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, there are very serious moments in the book. Obviously, if you are a baseball player and you go through that, it's very difficult. And if you are someone who loses your spouse, even if you were planning to leave him, it's still not an easy thing. And then trying to, figure out where you're going to go next in your life. So it was a lot of fun to read. I believe it was a debut novel by the novelist who is, I don't really listen much to NPR, to National Public Radio, but she apparently is a broadcaster on there. So you may be familiar with her, but just a fun read. And while it is a romance and there are some well, for the most part, it has a light touch to it. There are some very serious issues about, the reason why she was leaving her husband, and sort of the emotions that she's going through, as well as him. But it's more her point of view than his point of view. Anyhow, so that's a fun book if you're looking for that kind of thing. And then the TV show that I watched, is on HBO Max, and they've just finished airing their second season, and it's called Hacks. Jean Smart, and I can't remember the other actress's name in it, a younger one that I have not seen around as much. But basically, it's about a woman who's a comedian who came up in the 70s, early 80s, and she she's one of these people who basically got herself parked in Vegas and has had a show there for years. So it's sort of about her, and she's still performing a regular show and all of this, but sort of they're ready to, they are ready to move on. And then about this young woman who is a comedic writer. So not herself a comedian, but writes for comedians, who basically who had early success, but she can't help herself, and she tweets stupid things that she shouldn't tweet. And so she got fired from a job, and just sort of having to pick up the pieces. And so she ends up going to write for Jean Smart's character, Deborah Vance, I believe is the character's name. And it's billed as a comedy, but it's much more of a dramedy, because a lot of it is about the sacrifices that Deborah Vance had to make to get to where she needed to go. So she's an incredibly wealthy woman, and she's lived in a mansion by herself outside of Vegas, in the desert. And there's lots of frivolity about someone who's so rich, and the things that she's entitled to, but also tied up, that also the joke is that her husband, well, not the joke, but that her husband had an affair with her sister and left her for her sister. And so she burnt the house down to get back at him. And that's sort of a joke that she's played off of, and sort of what she had to do in order to make it as a comedian. And then also about this young woman who keeps blowing up her own life. She can't get, she is very talented at what she does, but she does stupid things because she thinks that she's entitled to a certain life that she hasn't earned, for lack of a better word. That she thinks that everyone should give her exactly what she wants because she's entitled, or that she, because she is good and she is a good comedic writer, but that she believes she can behave in a certain way. Anyhow, it's really well written. The second season came out, and they are going to do a third season. It's difficult and cringeworthy at times because, again, this young woman can't help but get in the way of herself. And then Jean Smart's character as well also does certain things, which actually become clearer later on why she makes certain decisions. But you don't necessarily see it. And so while you're watching it, it's sort of hard to comprehend. So anyhow, if you're looking for something different, Hacks, I would recommend. It is on HBO Max. Or it might be on regular HBO too, but we watch it on the streaming service. So that is all I have for you today. I hope that you have a good couple of weeks. I don't know exactly when I'll be back. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Hopefully some point in mid-July. And hopefully I will have a lot of good stuff for you from the Stitcher's Paradise. And fingers crossed that everything works out for me. I'm always a little bit nervous about flying in the summer with thunderstorms. Not because of the storms themselves, but just they can wreak havoc on air travel and on time and all of that. And I've been severely burned by that in the past, but canceled flights and blah, blah, blah. And it's the summertime. So anyhow, having said all of that, I hope everyone has a good couple of weeks, and I will see you again, hopefully in mid-July. Take care. Happy stitching.